Welcome back to the world of business studies. This is part 3, chapter 5, organizing. Students, in our last session, we have discussed about importance or a need of organizing in an organization. Let's start our session with span of management. What is a span of management? Span of management refers to the numbers of subordinates under one superior that can be effectively managed by a superior. It means span of management suggests that a manager should be given the total number of the subordinates which he or she can effectively manage. Like as per certain criteria, the school management will decide that how many students would be in the one classroom, or a teacher student ratio will be decided on the basis of the capacity of a teacher to manage the students effectively in a single classroom. CBSE time to time declares this teacher student ratio that would have to be managed and maintained by the schools. Like, for example, if CBSE decides that the teacher student ratio should be 1 is to 20, it means CBSE has decided that one teacher can effectively manage, guide, and control the 20 students at a time. So, span of management refers to that thing only, that how many subordinates a superior can effectively managed under him. That is what span of management. Now, span of management decides many other things also, like what gives a shape to the organizational structure. This span of management gives a shape to the organizational structure. What determines the level of management in organizational structure? This span of management will decide how many levels of management would be there in the organizational structure. How? Let's understand that in any organization, if there are 10 subordinates which can be effectively managed by a manager, then there would be only two levels of management, manager and workers. But if there are 30 subordinates, then a manager can manage only 10, so there would be need of 3 managers, so the level of management will increase. In the same manner, if the total number of the workers increases by 60, then now there are total 90 workers. So one manager has to appoint a subordinate worker as an sub-assistant. So one more level of management will be added into the organizational structure. So, this span of management will also decide the levels of management in an organizational structure. And what is the base for organizational structure? Obviously, the span of management is the base for organizational structure, because this span of management will decide that how many levels of management should be there in any organization. So it provides the basis for the organizational structure too. Now, there are types of span of management. There are only two types of span of management. First one, that is a wide span of management, and second one, that is narrow span of management. Let's discuss about both these types in detail. Let's start with the wide span of management. Wide span of management. Let's take the example of it. Now see, there is no sub-managers in this situation. Over here, all the workers are working under the single manager, and the single manager is able to control all the subordinates. So there is a more number of the subordinates working under a single manager. That is why it is considered as a wide span of management. Once again, wide span of management suggests that there are many subordinates working under a single manager, and there is no sub-managers to help the manager. So this is what considered as a wide span of management. Now let's discuss about the second type of span of management, that is narrow span of management. Now in a narrow span of management, you can see that there are three different managers. Why there are three different managers? Because these three managers are handling subordinates, which are three. In this diagram, you can clearly see that there is one more level added into this span of management because the total number of the employees were more. So whenever company adopts that there must be a less subordinates working under a manager, at that time one more level will be added into the organizational structure, and the span of management becomes narrow. Why it becomes narrow? The reason is that now in this span of management, the total number of the employees which a manager is managing is very less. That is why it is considered as a narrow span of management, whereas in wide span, a manager was controlling, managing more number of the subordinates. That's why it was considered as wide span of management. Whenever there is a narrow span of management, it increases one more level in the management, which you can see in this diagram. That first one, a single manager who will manage three other managers, and these three other managers will manage three subordinates under them. This is what the narrow span of management. Now let's continue discussion about the span of management. Now, from both the types of the span of management, we have discussed the larger the span of management, the smaller is the number of levels of management, and it's a vice versa. Why it is so? Because in larger span of management, that is a wide span of management, there are no levels of management, as a single manager is managing more number of the subordinates. So there is a smaller level of management. Whereas the smaller the span of management, the larger is the number of level of management, which we have seen in the narrow span of management, which introduced one more level to control the subordinates under them. When we discuss about both the types of the span of management, then we have to see that what kind of the benefits are there. Whenever a company adopts narrow span management, it will allow the effective and close supervision of the employees in the narrow span of management, because under narrow span of management, a manager controls a limited number of the subordinates. So effective and close supervision is possible. Whereas in wide span of management, there is a general and flexible supervision, because the manager manages many numbers of the workers or subordinates under him. Now let us discuss about the next question, that is organizational structure. Success of any organization largely depends on what kind of the organizational structure they have adopted. There are different type of the organizational structure in Form 12, but before we discuss about the different type of the organizational structure, first of all we have to discuss what exactly the organizational structure is. Student, organizational structure means it's the network of the job position, authority and responsibility at different levels of organization. While discussing about the process of organizing, we have discussed identification and division of job, departmentalization, assigning duties, establishing reporting relationship. Now, this process will be exactly implemented at the stage of organizational structure. Who will perform which activity, when it will be performed, where it will be performed, how it will be performed, who is going to perform all these activities, who will report to whom, who will take orders from whom. This everything will be actually practically implemented at the stage of organizational structure. Whatever was planned, that actual implementation of that plan would be at this stage. Like if planning sales says what to do, how to do, when to do, and who is going to do it, then all those answers will be given practically in this structure. The structure will be created for the different job positions, for who will responsible, who is accountable, who is the authorized, that everything, that structure will be created at this stage of organizing. Now, the requirement of the organizational structure is normally felt when there is increase in the size and nature of the organization. If the organization is small, then there is a less requirement of a systematized organizational structure. But if the size and nature of the business increases, the necessity for the organizational structure also increases. If we take the example of our school, that before we started the girls department separately, we had only one coordinator, one academic in charge, and limited number of the teachers in the boys school. But when we started girls department, there was need for one more academic in charge. There was a need for many new commerce teachers. There was a need to appoint the new office staff, new subordinate staff, many other facilities we had to. And to control and manage this new department, there was a need to establish a new organizational structure. So, when organization grows in size and nature, there is a need for a separate organizational structure. And whenever we decide to opt for organizational structure, there are different considerations which we have to decide before we adopt a particular organizational structure, because it largely depends on the different kind of the jobs, departmentalization, what kind of the span of management a company wants to achieve, whether there is a delegation of authority allowed in the organization or not. This all and many other factors will help the organization to select the organizational structure. Let's discuss about the types of organizational structure. Students, as per new syllabus, there are only two types of the organizational structure, but we will discuss about the three types of organizational structure because the change in syllabus is made just 2 years back, and as per the certain rules, we have to study the cancelled syllabus for at least 3 years because CBSE can ask something from that. First, that is functional organizational structure. Second, divisional organizational structure, which is known as DOS. Third one, which is not there in the current year's syllabus, but we will only list the name of that type. So if it is asked in the MCQ or objective types, you can reply for that question. That is territory or a geographical location based organizational structure. Now let's discuss about one of the most important organizational structure, that is functional organizational structure. Now the name itself, it suggests what it could be in this type of the organizational structure. Students, each and every organization would be functioning its business on the basis of certain activities, and all those activities are considered as its functions. Like if we take example of industry, then minimum functions which each and every type of the industries would be performing are the purchase of raw material, production of the goods, selling of the product, marketing the products. So these are considered as the functions. So the organizational structure in which the departments are created on the basis of major functions being performed, then it is considered as a functional organizational structure. Once again, dear, functional organizational structure, it divides the organization on the basis of main functions being performed in the organization. It is not so that other functions won't be performed, but the functions apart from the main functions would be categorized under some basic functions. So the departments will be created on the main functions being performed. Then it is considered as a functional organizational structure. Like if we discuss that company purchases raw material, company purchases tools and equipments, then there shouldn't be two separate departments, that purchase of raw material and purchase of tools. Though both are the functions, but this can be categorized under one larger function, that is a purchase. So this is what main function which is performed by the organization. Now, this functional organizational structure, it is the simplest and most prevalent form of organizational structure. Mostly, the small scale industries and medium scale industries prefers to adopt this kind of the organizational structure. Under this, all those similar and related activities which are performed in an organization will be grouped under a larger unit, larger department, and that would be managed by one executive. Now, the department which is under the control of one executive, there may or may not be having one of the coordinating head, and it can be further divided into the separate sections if required. And in the department itself, sometimes grouping is also done on the basis of certain specialized function. So, if the organization is divided into the departments which are based on the main functions being performed, then it is considered as functional organizational structure. Now let's see how the functions are classified into different activities and what type of the functional organizational structure is. First one, there is board of directors. Under him, that would be managing director, and managing director will create the department on the basis of the main functions which are being performed in the organization, that is production, marketing, finance, and purchase. Students, if there are this much department presented over here, it doesn't mean that an organization will perform this many functions only. This is the simplest and generalized example. The company may have more than these departments also. But for the ease of understanding, we have taken the example of these four departments under which a company is divided. Now, these are the four minimum functions which would be performed by each and every manufacturing or industrial department. They need to purchase the raw material, they have to produce the product, for that they need the finance, and after producing, they need to sell their product. That is what the marketing. So, these are the minimum activities which will be performed in any of the organization. Now, it is not so that only this much activity would be performed. There are many other activities which will be performed in the organization, but all those different kind of the activities would be similar or related to these four main departments. Like the purchase department would be purchasing the raw material, would be purchasing the stationaries, would be purchasing tools and equipments, would be purchasing the machineries. There are many purchases which will be made in an organization, but all those purchases would be grouped under one larger unit, that is this purchase department. In the similar manner, there would be many financial activities which would be performed on a regular basis also. Then all those activities will be grouped in the finance department. In the same manner, the marketing department would be performing the activity of advertisement of different workshops and seminars which would be performed in a different time and different ways. That would be grouped under the marketing. So is for the production unit also. Let's see the other things. There are certain activities which will be performed under production department, that is processing, quality control, repairs, and maintenance. Under marketing, that is advertising, sales, customer supports, customer grievances centers, many other. Under finance department, what would be the capital structure of the enterprise, how the financial planning will be made, how the financial resources would be allocated into the different department, how much would be the fixed capital, how much would be blocked in the current accounts, cash in hand, bank, that everything would be managed under the finance department. If we discussed about the purchase, then purchase of raw material, purchase of tools, purchase of equipments, as well as all other miscellaneous purchase will be grouped under the larger unit, that is the purchase department. This is how the functional organizational structure will be created, and on the basis of the size and nature of the organization, more or less department would be created to manage the organization efficiently and effectively. If it requires it can be further subdivided into the other department also. Let's take example of it, like marketing department includes the advertising activity. Now, if it is MNC, then in that advertising, they can have a subdivisions, that advertising in printing media and advertising in electronic media. So, this structure can further be divided into the subheadings also. Let's have a quick recap about what we have discussed today. We have discussed about span of management. We have discussed about the types of span of management, which were classified into the narrow span of management and wide span of management. Then we have discussed what is organizational structure, how it will be created, what are the bases of organizational structure, what will decide the size of organizational structure, and then we have discussed about one of the most important type of organizational structure, that is a functional organizational structure. What kind of this structure is, how departments are created, on what basis the department would be created in functional organizational structure, which is popularly known as FOS, that we have discussed today. It's time for assignment, and assignment for today, that is, what is a span of management, types of span of management, what is organizational structure, and give classification of functional organizational structure. When we discuss about the classification of a functional organizational structure, it includes the theoretical part as well as the classification which we have discussed today, which was the board of directors, managing directors, and different heads, which were further classified into the subtypes. So that exactly makes what is the classification of functional organizational structure. Now it's the time to say bye bye and thank you. Bye bye, dear students. Goodbye. I hope the concept which I tried to explain, you understood it. If you have any doubts, you can contact me. Try to solve all the assignments by yourself. Thank you very much. Stay home, stay safe, and keep learning. Consider this lockdown period as an opportunity to learn new things and make your foundation very strong. Thank you once again. Bye bye.